Welcome to Happy Path Programming. I'm Bruce Eckel.
I'm James Ward. All right, well, welcome. We are back, and it is Friday the 13th.
Oh, scary.
Yeah. And today we have with us Tonya Moore. Hi, Tonya. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we don't record the video, so we can see you, but no one else can. We just record the audio.
And I will stop messing with my hair.
Friday the 13th costumes.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys do look extra scary today.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
So how do you two know each other?
Tonya and I had a brief overlap when we worked at TypeSafe together, but we didn't
Lightbend.
Lightbend.
Yes.
I saw Jonas last week in Stockholm, who's now the CEO and was the CTO, co-founder of Lightbend. And I was telling him how every time I talk about TypeSafe Lightbend, I have to say Lightbend, formerly known as TypeSafe. And he's like, do you think at this point you can just stop saying the formerly known as TypeSafe thing? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm quite ready for that yet. So now it's still, to me, is Lightbend.
It's still fresh for you?
Yeah, still fresh.
Companies changing their names has always seemed like, I don't know, it's problematic.
There's challenges.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was problematic at the time, too. We had a lot of pushback. Yeah.
You were there through
a lot of feedback.
Name change, huh?
Yes,
yeah,
I was.
It's more of an MBA thing than it is for anybody else thing. And that's a whole nother hot button for me. But anyway, so you guys knew each other there a little bit, but never actually met face to face
until 2 weeks ago at DevNexus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And you are now at Startree, which tell us about Startree. And I think the name means something, but I don't know what it means. Like there's some cool relation to like something real with Startree, right? Like,
you know what? This is the first I'm hearing of it, if there is. So I am pretty new to Startree, so you might teach me something.
Maybe. Tell us what Startree does, and then I'll see if it triggers the thing that I was thinking of.
Okay. Are you guys familiar with Apache Pinot at all?
I heard of it, but don't know much about it.
Okay. Apache Pinot, yes, that would be the best way to describe it. But the second way... Right, is it's a real-time analytics database that helps you make large amounts of data that you have pulled from separate sources queryable very, very fast. And then Startree has a fully managed version of Apache Pinot.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it's got this data like a I don't know. At some point, we were doing like data warehousing, and a lot of my data knowledge is probably out of date. But we would take data from a lot of different places and dump them into a warehouse or a data lake or whatever, and that would give us then the ability to like query across different data sources, because we just would aggregate all that data together into one place. And maybe Apache Pinot is doing something similar. I don't know.
I think, didn't it say it used Kafka or was good at connecting to Kafka?
Good at connecting to Kafka. Yeah, actually our VP of Developer Relations just came over from Confluent.
Oh, cool.
So there's a lot of crossover there.
That's Tim, right? Who you and
That is Tim Berglund, who needs no introduction.
Yes, he is just amazing friend of mine. And I don't know if you've ever met Tim in person, but he lives down in Denver, the Denver area.
I know the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He is an absolute delight. If you ever get a chance, do meet him.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So Startree. I think there was some relation to like some algorithm for doing like queries that is called Startree or something like that was the motivation for the company name.
Oh, like some theoretical foundation.
Yeah, I don't remember what
I could see that.
But
all I know is somebody back at Startree is going to be mad I don't know this.
We're getting you in trouble.
Oh no, that's not what this podcast is for.
We're 4 minutes in and I'm already in trouble, guys. Come on.
That's fine. So you're like at Lightbend and IBM and Startree, you specialized in community relations or
correct.
And you use the term community manager.
I did use that term, yes.
Okay. And how do you
That's
manage?
what they printed on my business card, so that's what I kind of use.
Do you think it's ironic that the word manager starts with man? Like, it seems like reinforcing patriarchy.
Well, the
Smash the
patriarchy is very good at
patriarchy.
reinforcing itself, so
Yes, it
probably.
is. Yeah.
It's true.
We need a gender neutral
I do
word
have
manager.
Community manager in my title, but as you were about to reference, I do not think a community can be managed so much as it can be helped along.
Yeah, that's what I had this inspiration the other day when you look at management, which is so much about telling and controlling and things like that. Maybe if we turned it around, maybe we need a new title, but if instead of manage, it would just be help. Because if that was the orientation, because manager says I got to control you, whereas if it's like how can I help you, that's a totally different thing. So basically, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to help the community along.
I think of management as like a static thing, like when you're holding it, when you're grasping it in your two hands, right? That's management. And I think that what we do is much more fluid and much more of a helpful and useful thing instead of a grasping thing.
And how do you do that?
It's easy, Bruce. It's just like this.
Okay.
No,
is you have your philosophy of how you help a community.
Can we teach this in business school?
Can you cookie cutter it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if there was a land and expand, we would have written it out by now, I'm sure. I think that the key to helping the community, it sounds really simple, but it does not get taught in MBA classes, is to listen. It's the most important component. I don't feel like this podcast is a little odd for me because I don't feel like I do a lot of talking usually. I feel like I do a lot of listening, trying to understand people's pain points, trying to understand what people are trying to express. I feel like everybody has a story to tell. Everybody wants to tell their story. So part of my job is just to listen to that story and see how I can connect it with other stories.
So the original definition of marketing is basically what you just said. It's like finding out what the customer wants, not telling the customer to buy your product. So this sounds like a really important but also long-term sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's different from marketing. I feel like marketing is trying to feed you something, right? Marketing is trying to draw you along. Whereas I feel like community, yes, where I feel community, we're trying to let them lead us. We're trying to help shape where they're going, but we want them to tell us where to go.
Right.
Yeah, and who they want to be as a community and what they value, and yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you, let's just get right into it. Do you have any ideas about how to keep a community from becoming toxic or guide a community towards a friendliness approach rather than how some communities have spiraled into toxicity?
That's a really interesting conversation, but can we first say what we mean by toxicity? Can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah.
I guess for me, it's just, I don't know, any sort of being mean. I had an experience years ago with an unnamed community where I had a technical question and I found what seemed like a reasonable group. And basically, when I asked my question, they effectively shouted at me, and I didn't take it personally because it was just like, oh, this is who you guys are. Held up my hands and backed slowly out of the room, and didn't go back looking for answers anymore because I go, oh, and I have a friend who had the same experience with the same community. And it was so off-putting. I'm not even sure what they were trying to achieve by being so hostile.
Well, they were trying to feel smart.
They were trying to feel smart.
I guess. But so my experience with a community like that versus the Python community, which is kind of legendarily friendly, and one of the reasons why I think Python has become such a successful language is because the leader of the language has always had that goal of being friendly to everybody.
Isn't there even a saying, be kind, because
the poster might be 13 or whatever. Yeah, Guido said that.
What was the actual quote?
I think it was something to that effect.
Be kind because Guido is kind. Or
no, be kind because whoever you're answering the question to or posting or whatever might be 13 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that was
his object.
But Guido said that, and it said
that is my recollection.
A tone for the community.
Well, more than that. I mean, that was just one example of what he would do. It's just in general, he surrounded himself with people who were kind and caring, and then they surrounded themselves with people. It just kind of spread out that way.
So maybe a question for Tonya is, I would guess that there were at some point situations where somebody in that community, even in that community, did something unkind, and maybe that's part of the actual. To answer your question, I'd like to hear Tonya's perspective on this. Like what? How do you deal with that? And I don't know. Is that a good place to start, or do we need to take a step back to?
No, I think that's an okay place to start. And I understand what you're talking about with the Python community. I come from the Java community. I was recruited into tech by Oracle right after it was taken over by Sun, and
vice versa.
Okay, and Java is such an inclusive community. Has such an inclusive community, and I think that a lot of that goes back to Gosling and Sun and just the way that they embraced the community at the beginning. Then it kind of took a turn when Oracle took it over, right? So it's become a different process. It's become a different community. The A number one thing obviously has got to be respect. You have to have respect for your fellow people, for your fellow question askers. And then I think another thing that's really important is to make sure you know who your allies are and engage those. It's not a one-person job to teach somebody respect. It's not a one-person job to teach a community how to respect each other. You have to have a lot of people who are on the same page. You have to have a lot of people who want to be respectful, who encourage that and desire that within their community. If you have a bunch of people who are determined to be assholes, then that's what the community is going to be, no matter what. How do you take that and discourage it and try and pivot it? That's an interesting question. Like, how do you try and get a hold of that before it gets out of hand and poisons the whole community? That's a very interesting question. Are you able to dial in to a few certain people and talk to them directly? Is it coming from some of the major thought leaders? That's a whole different problem. Is it coming from companies directly? This is a whole different problem. So there are a lot of components to that question. So I guess it depends on where you want to go in.
Yeah, because my feeling about how the Python community is different is that it's if you're going to be an unpleasant person, there's just not much traction you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that had to be built from the start. But it's a little different than, actually confronting people. It's just that it's just not a very fruitful place for somebody to go in and try and be unpleasant.
Somehow the environment.
Do you guys think that has something to do with the vehicle that is used as well? Like Twitter can be completely toxic.
Sure.
And I find that a lot of communities who build around Twitter are more likely to be that way than communities that build around other vehicles or other venues. Do you think that's part of it?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, that probably is one element of creating an environment that is either conducive to assholes or not conducive to assholes, is like how the community connects and communicates is probably part of that. I mean, back in the IRC days, IRC was like Twitter, so much horrible toxicity on IRC, and then I don't know, maybe there is something about the Python community that in the ways that the community is formed or the ways that they communicate that have created an environment that is not as conducive to assholes as other ones. I don't know. I don't know the Python community very well and how it formed and how they can.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm not very familiar with Python.
Well, I wrote along because I've been using it since sometime in the mid 90s. And so I kind of wrote along and watched it, but I wasn't like paying attention to, oh, how is this happening? How is this happening? I think it was always just an overarching intent. It was foundational. I mean, the language itself was created to make programming easier for everybody. And so you're starting with that as an objective, and that, I think, influenced things. But Guido himself, the people who were drawn to him, of my experience of, because I spent some time with the core Python developers, and they just always seemed to be nice and helpful and pleasant. And just
that's amazing. When you start from a foundation of just wanting to be helpful, like building something just to be helpful, that's obviously has to influence your community and how they grow.
Well, and I think when you form a company, you need to have not very many, but a few solid foundational principles. And if one of them is to be nice and helpful or whatever, and if people don't buy into that, then that needs to be, oh no, this is what we're about. We're about, 2 or 3 things. You have a mission, and that selects who becomes part of your team. And true with the company as well. I mean, the culture, I visited a company, I won't name them, but I had been writing about company culture at the time, and I showed up and somebody said, oh, we decided, here this morning, I came up with these things that are going to be our company culture. And I was like, oh, how do I explain that it's not, your company culture already happened?
Right.
And it isn't a thing that
and you're not going to change it by writing down what you want it to be. Have you ever tried that?
For sure.
Have you ever been part of an organization that tried to write down the culture that they wanted and then tried to make that their culture?
Which, when you're starting the company, if you do that, that's one thing.
Right.
You have these core foundational principles, and the culture flows from that. But if you've already been hiring and bringing people in, every time you hire somebody, you affect your company culture. You're buying into who they are. And it's very difficult, I think, to bring somebody in and say, oh, I know this is your personality, but this is how we work. And have them, people have had lots of experience about how that doesn't seem to work. It would require.
It is very interesting when you work in a startup about how every hire does influence your community, how every hire is important to your culture. It's not such a big thing when you work at like an IBM, but when you work at a Lightbend or at a Star Tree, every person makes a difference in numerous ways. So to answer your question earlier, James, have I ever tried to solve a problem by building a new, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to act? I have seen that happen, and it never works. It's about what you're building, not about what you're saying.
So if you have a code of conduct, it's like, I don't know. I mean, if a company exists and you go, oh, now we're going to have a code of conduct, it's like, wow, I wonder how well that works versus here's our code of conduct. Can you live with this? Is this okay with you? Or, are you happy with this?
Or maybe there's another place for you.
Exactly. Exactly. So much of it is about.
Maybe one of the functions of a code of conduct is to set the expectations for people who may be joining the community for what they can expect. And if someone is like, I'm not cool with, I'd rather be an asshole than abide by that code of conduct, then they can go find a different community to be part of.
It's a filter.
A filter.
Yeah.
And, water does find its level. So I don't think that that's an unusual proposition to say, maybe this is not the place for you. Maybe there's another place for you.
Yeah. And I think that's way more important than, oh, we got to fill this position. This person has these qualifications, so everything else is fine. It's like, I know that's somebody's putting pressure on you.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to move forward. We got to become this way.
Yeah.
But
did you see that there's some tweets last week or something about somebody saying how they made sure that there was always a woman on a hiring panel for like a developer positions for like a in a developer company, because they wanted to see how the person being interviewed
reacted
specifically interacted with the woman on the interview panel, like how they how that interaction went, because that to them was something that was important in the culture that they were building, was making sure that everyone was going to be treated well and equally. And so if you only had a panel of men, then you would not get good information about how this person was maybe going to treat other people. And I thought that
the
was
mantle.
The
mantle.
The mantle, yeah.
But if I'm a good interviewer, I can fake that.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it might reveal something. Yes,
it might reveal something. It's not guaranteed.
But I agree with Bruce, though. Like you know how you're supposed to act on an interview.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be that way.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole problem.
Go ahead.
We actually just extended. It's a little bit of a pivot, but we actually just extended our CFP. We have a conference. Startree is putting on a conference this year called the Real Time Analytics Summit, and we actually just extended our CFP because we don't have enough diverse speakers yet.
Call for
so
paper.
That's something that's like super. So that's something that's super important in our culture, is to make sure that we don't just have our white man panels across the board and our white man speakers. So it's part of the culture, make sure that everybody is represented fully.
At the Python conference, there is a definite, and again, I don't remember where this came from, but it was like, we want ideally half women speakers. People from all kinds of, and that's super. I mean, when you go to the Python conference, it's like, wow, there's so many women at this conference. It's still not half, but compared to all the other conferences, which have 2 or 3%, it's very friendly.
And they had to set it.
That's how I can tell it. Yeah, that's how I can tell it's a good conference, is if there's a line for me to get into the bathroom or not.
That's a good indicator of doing diversity well.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be something that might be valuable for you to attend the Python conference, just to see how they do things.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
Yeah, no, it's very worthwhile, I think.
So back to the toxicity thing, I think that some communities will have something happen, somebody not treating someone well, and there's an element of community that I want to get your perspective on, which is how should a community or community manager, how should a community respond to those when those things happen, when there's someone that has been hurt or wronged, or I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like when
absolutely.
When an asshole rears its head, like what do you do?
Well, if you're a technical person, you shrug and say shit happens. And that's too complicated. That's touchy-feely stuff. I don't want to deal with that.
That's absolutely true. I can tell you a story, and again, we never name names, of a time when I was at a conference and someone was actually harassing me.
Wow. Sorry.
Sorry about that. My phone went off. Thought I had it on mute. So I was actually harassed at a conference, and I went by someone that was on a team that was close to mine, someone within the company. So I went to my supervisor, I went to my boss, my direct, and was like, hey, this happened. And he gave me a hug. And that was how he solved it, which was the most tone deaf thing that I think has ever happened to me in the entire world. Yes. Developers don't want to deal with it.
You're having feelings. Let me give you a hug, and that will make the feelings go away.
Right? This will make this all better. Fantastic. So when something like that happens, the important first thing, obviously, is to listen. You have to listen. You have to hear what's happening. You have to hear what's been said. You have to hear about how that person feels about it, and what they would like to have done about it. I think that it's important when you address the person that has done the wrong. You have to set some very clear and healthy boundaries immediately. You have to make sure that they understand what has happened, why it is not acceptable, and what we can do to make it better going forward. Is this something that you need to be, and this isn't something that you discuss with that person, but you have to have an idea. Is this a person that needs to be removed from the community? How toxic is this? Did they make an honest mistake? Because honest mistakes do happen, and we are a changing culture, and not everybody is up on everything currently. So there are steps that you can take, right? You have to listen. You have to be an ally. It's especially important for our white men to be allies, right? Like, there's a lot of power in being a white man. And if someone who has less power comes to you and says that there's a problem, it is absolutely your responsibility to be an ally.
Yeah.
And yeah, you need to figure out like what kind of issue it was, what the actual boundary was crossed, and what you want to do about it. So that's a revolving question.
Yeah.
Well, I have definitely seen.
There's not like you can't summarize the law into like 3 bullet points and say this is exactly what you do.
But in a code of conduct,
no.
Ideally, you are saying, here's what will happen if something happens to you, you go to these people or one of these people, and here's what happens. So it's very clear that some kind of action takes place.
Yeah.
And it isn't just like going to HR and they go, oh, how's this going to look for the company?
Yeah.
It's a real.
Yeah, there has to be some procedural things written down. I remember
and that's where the healthy boundaries comes in. Like, you want to make sure those are already spelled out in advance, right? You're not trying to surprise anybody. We're not trying to catch anybody out. We're trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when the Winter Tech Forum was defining the code of conduct, and because you organized the conference, it seemed logical that if there's a code of conduct issue, then
come to me,
then come to Bruce.
And then Diane goes, what if you're the problem? And I go, well, of course. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's all those little things that you have to, yeah, I mean, it's like a legal document, basically. You have to, work through all the eventualities and figure out. But when you were talking about,
but you can't work through all the eventualities.
You can't, but you have to have some sort of foundational process that says, here's basically how we're going to deal with this.
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure some stuff out on the fly because, everything's probably, this is something that maybe wasn't nailed down in the document, but
right.
But we're going to do something.
Yeah.
And
sure.
you can expect these things to be taken, and so you won't just be ignored or hugged.
Yeah, and that's a very important part. That's a very important part of it, is knowing that action is going to be taken and knowing that there will be some kind of resolution.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So when you talked about you have to listen, I'm assuming that you're talking about active listening, where you are actually saying, oh, so here's what I heard you say.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, because that's not always. I mean, to feel heard, that's usually a very necessary part of it, and it's not always said. So, yeah,
it's much easier to listen and then be thinking about the response that I'm going to have instead. That's my default is to not listen with the intent to understand, but listen with the intent of responding.
Oh,
I wasn't listening. I was thinking about what I was going to say. What? Say that again?
Yeah. You're very sarcastic today. I like it.
I am.
I'm bringing it out in him, apparently.
Possibly. Maybe. Yeah, it's hard to know whether it's you or just James.
Friday the 13th.
Let's blame
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And one of the other things I was thinking about with this is that what seems to happen is that communities that don't deal well with toxicity, it pushes out the the nice people and attracts more.
It's
absolutely
self-reinforcing. Yeah, that's the thing. Once it starts going down that spiral, or that, whatever, it just keeps reinforcing itself, and pretty soon, well, actually, this is a good question. Do you think once a community gets to a certain point, is it possible to bring it back? I mean, it seems like
not
it gets
without
harder.
a huge revamp.
Yeah.
And I mean, from the ground up, or from the top down, depending on which way you need to go. But yeah, a lot of times you can watch a community circle a drain. I've seen it happen for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and basically what you're saying, it sounds like to me, is that, oh, well, you just have to create a new community. You just have to start over. Yeah.
And that's a whole different problem right there, is how do you take out the toxicity, cut it out, move it to the side, bring in fresh ideas and fresh thoughts. It's a huge uphill battle. I don't know how you would have to catch it pretty quickly, I think, for that to be a successful project.
Yeah, and you'd have to be oriented that way in the first place. You would be correcting something rather than saying, "Oh no, this has all gone down the drain." And
right.
I mean, to me, and maybe I give up too easy, but I would say, "Oh, I think you just need to start a new community over here, and the people who are willing, or to put up with the new rules or the new guidelines or objectives, will come, and the others will just say, no, we're going to stay here and fight with each other."
We actually had something similar happen, not quite to that extent, but here in Chicago, we had a Chicago Java users group that ended up splintering into two groups because they had such different ideas of how that community should be run, what they should be focused on, and what their goal should be, that they ended up splitting. And it's worked for everybody.
Maybe that was a decent solution.
I think it was the best solution possible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels evolutionary to me, because you go, all right, well, we have this this little gene mutation that takes us in this direction, and this one that takes us, and if you keep doing that, you get something that a lot of people might go, oh, I want to go there, but only through those experiments can you find that.
Yeah. You also lose something in that you're, like, I found on the political spectrum, I don't really hear much from the other side of the political spectrum, because I've kind of isolated myself into a community that is mostly speaking what I want to hear.
Yes.
And so I am missing other perspective a lot of times.
Well, perspective, I'm not sure if the perspective is as important as the hearing what their pain points are.
I'm not in a place often where I can listen to what the other political side has to say.
And that takes a lot of compassion, because if you hear things like, oh, we're doing these things because we don't feel included, or we feel like we're losing, our place in the world.
Yeah.
And if you can hear that, then what they do, even though you can't make logical sense of it, but you can understand the I don't know, the place of the fear and the needs that it comes from, and you can have compassion with that without following any of the, say, oh, that's where these other things come from. You're just you are afraid of, I don't know, being lost and losing your place in the world and everything. And that's, our most fundamental need is to be in a tribe, because if we're not in a tribe, we're probably going to die.
Going to get eaten by a lion.
Going to be eaten, going to starve, whatever it is. And so the being excluded or lost is terrifying at a very fundamental level.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you brought up compassion. It does seem like a cornerstone of healthy communities is compassion. Bill Venners just announced he was leaving, being the community manager for Scala, essentially.
I didn't know that.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and this just
I
happened a
didn't
couple
either.
weeks ago, or I mean, a couple days ago. But in his parting letter to the Scala community, a lot of it was about how the Scala community needs to have more compassion for everyone, and I thought that was a really great framing for for community.
I'm expecting a phone call from Bill then.
Yeah,
because Bill and I, we did a 3-week bike tour of the South Island of New Zealand together. Yeah. So we're pretty good friends. Yes. Yeah. Well, and that was in 2000, so it was a long time ago. But
yeah.
That's something, because I remember he called me once and asked, "How does the Python community do it?"
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see who takes that over.
Yeah, it is, but that's not a paid position, right?
I don't think so.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. So
it's like, and he volunteered for many years.
Yes,
doing that.
Many years.
But so I think compassion, like, maybe has to be one of those foundational things that is part of a healthy community. Maybe, I don't know, Tonya. What
I think it absolutely has to be. Yeah, it absolutely has to be the ability to get past your own ego and your own agenda. To listen to what somebody else has to say is a huge part of it, for sure.
That's asking a lot, though.
It is asking a lot.
We're not trained to do that. We're trained to say you're wrong and bad.
Right.
That's
right. And I think that you see that reflected in some communities. I think some communities that their standpoint is we're smarter, we're better, we do it faster or whatever, So instead of saying like, we can all figure this out together, they're saying you have to jump on our bandwagon. You have to be part of our crowd. You have to do what we want to do. There's a lack of compassion there. So you can see that reflected very strongly.
I would say that might be the foundational deal of whether a community becomes toxic or not.
Yeah, for sure.
It probably is just compassion.
Yeah.
But
then there's tools, I think, to help us be compassionate.
Yes.
And Bruce much more than I, but we've done a bit of work in nonviolent communication. And nonviolent communication to me in some ways seems like a tool to bring compassion to others.
I would say that could be a really good description of it. That's essentially what you're doing. And yeah, because one of the most foundational things you do is simply reflect back to a person when they're saying, here's what's going on with me. This thing happened and I have feelings about it and I have needs. You go, oh, so this thing happened to you, and you feel heard. And so many times, like I had this experience long ago when I guess it was early-ish in my speaking career, when I was somebody had told me this, I was giving a presentation, somebody got up with a question, and it turned out they just wanted to be heard. And I go, oh, I know what to do in this case. Simply repeat the question back to them. And it's like the storm just went flat. That's all they wanted. They wanted to know that they had been heard. And so many times when you study nonviolent communication, so many things is, oh, this husband and wife have been fighting for 20 years. And Marshall Rosenberg gets up and he goes, all right, you say what your problem is. You say this back to them. And it could be really hard to get the usually husband to say back to the wife what she said. But once he did that, she was going, that's all I've ever wanted, just to feel heard. And they were struggling with this for 20 years. Or 40.
I didn't know we were going to talk about my divorce while we were here. That's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, well, okay, that's interesting, because you've been a community manager for a number of years. And so what this is. But yeah, the thing about nonviolent communication, the tough part of it is the regret that you have for not knowing it all of your life. Yeah. But even when it, it's like, oh, this would have made my life so different because we could have discovered whether we were ever going to move forward from this simply by having this communication and discovering, our needs don't meet, and there's no strategy that can make that happen. And and then you go, oh my gosh, how many years of my life did I struggle with that? And now I see I could have had, a few conversations. And
it's funny because once you learn those skills, you see so many adults who don't have them. And it's shocking to me. How many do not have that skill set available to them?
Mm-hmm.
Is it time that in technical communities we start giving people tools so that they can be more compassionate?
Well, at the Python conference, one of the things that they do is they have open spaces. And so I held an open space on nonviolent communication. 5 or 6 people showed up, but as we know with open spaces, whoever shows up is the right person. And I got, everybody seemed, we had a good conversation. Yeah. So sometimes I'll do that, just, an introduction to it. And
I think that's another role that a community manager takes on. I think that we're a tool for that kind of compassion. We are a tool to teach that kind of empathy and to help guide people to act similarly instead of reacting.
Yeah, I was curious about what other tools there might be besides nonviolent communication. And I think what you're pointing out, Tonya, is saying that having people that emulate or become an example of compassion is a really important tool for building compassion within a community. And maybe that's part of what the Python community did so well, was that compassion was emulated and exampled.
Well, Guido is a compassionate person and also very sensitive himself. And so he knew what it felt like to, deal with people who are being aggressive. And so he didn't want that in his community. I mean, I'm making some assumptions here, but I do know him. So
that's a great foundation to build from. And I wish more communities had that kind of foundation.
But we're asking this really smart technical person to also have these other abilities and to care about stuff like this. Yeah.
Right.
And
a lot of the smart technical people are worried about smart technical things and not so much about the other side of the coin.
Yeah. And so how do we, I guess the way that we bring it in is one of the nice things about nonviolent communication is that it has developed a real structure for teaching and, some clear thing, because the problem is when you've lost your center and you're, in distress, it's really hard to go, okay, what are the steps now? I actually developed a system that is based on the fingers of your hand, because I go, I've always got my hand, and I can always, start with my pointing finger and say, here's a thing that happened in the world. And we go, and if people disagree on what happened in the world, well, you're already in trouble. It's like, you let the dog get out. Well, okay, now we've got a problem because I've pointed my finger gun at another person, which is, you don't point a gun at another person. So you always have to be able to point it at just an objective person, thing in the world. Yes, because as soon as you bring in another person, then they're going to feel attacked. Even if you're just going, well, you did let the dog get out. And it's like, no, just don't even say that. The dog escaped. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only thing.
The dog escaped.
Whose fault it is not going to get us forward. So anyway, that kind of thing. And there is a structure in NVC which allows you to kind of try and maintain your center while something distressing is happening. So.
Yeah, not being pulled into crisis is a huge part of it, I think.
Yes.
It's a big component.
It is, because then you're identifying with something in it, and it's your own stuff that you're bringing to the table. And it's like, okay, we're trying to keep away from that until we get to my own feelings and my own needs. If we can achieve that, and it's it's about me. Even though I'm having feelings and I want to put them on you, I want to go, God, you're the person that's making me have these feelings. And it's like, no, it's my issues that are making me have these feelings. And so you're just trying to keep those things separate. What happened in the world? what I felt about it, what my needs are, and maybe I have a request about it. And a request, it can't be a demand. It can't be, James, if you don't do this, you're going to pay the price. That's a demand. But those are usually implied. It's just like, so I need you to do this thing for me.
And if I don't,
yes,
it's been fascinating.
You can imagine the consequences. They're going to be.
Ooh.
It's like with my son, I have a 10-year-old, and I give him, ever since he's been a baby, I've given him the 1, 2, 3 when he does something outlandish, right?
Yeah.
I've never had to get to 3. 1, 2, 3 is when you just give them a count of 3, and they have up till 3 to get it together. Whatever's going wrong, they have until 3 to figure it out and come down off that cloud. I've never had to reach 3. And he has no idea what would happen if I said 3.
Just the imagined consequences are so severe.
Something really bad's going to happen. Well, that is a demand. That's a perfect example of a demand.
Yeah.
And we don't. I don't respond well to demands at all.
No.
Kids are.
I actually majored in psychology in college, and I think that Psychology 101 has held me strongly throughout all these years, which is I statements, not you statements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the most basic concept. Is it's not you. It's about what I feel, what I need, what I'm asking for.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's been fun to watch my kids evolve and learn, and the violent communication must just somehow be like
built into boys
and girls. So this story is about Josie.
Oh, really?
6. So just yesterday, she Jonah, the 4-year-old, had kind of trapped her outside. And so she had a ball and she threw the ball like at the door, and then it like bounced and rolled away. And she comes inside and she's like, Jonah, you made me lose my ball. And so it gives us a lot of opportunities to try to do what you're talking about, is like, okay, what actually happened? You threw the ball and it rolled away, and you were trapped outside by Jonah, but
you could draw, if you work at it, you can draw this sequence of responsibility and make it Jonah's fault. But
it's so fascinating.
Choices were made.
Humans. What is that?
Choices were made.
Choices were made.
Yeah, but it's like our whole culture is so focused on, well, naturally it's somebody else's fault. And it's really hard, as hard as you try to not mirror that. I mean, everything else they're getting.
Yeah.
And all of our movies, so many movies are revenge fantasies.
Yeah.
It's like, they got what's coming to them because they were bad.
Yeah. So it's like, where did Josie learn this like blame thing? And it's, I think, just the water that we live in is like, she's learned it from school and from shows and from, this just everywhere.
But not from her parents' thing.
Oh yeah. We never blame. Never.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that. I've never felt blamed by you.
Come spend a day in my household with 2 little kids.
Yeah. I wonder how much of it is nature.
Yeah. I wonder how much is from evolution and how much is cultural. I wonder if you could find.
I think we have a fairly natural indication or inclination to pass the buck as humans. I think we have a fairly natural inclination sometimes to try and get out of whatever water we have mistakenly put ourselves in. I think that comes out in children quite a lot. We learn to get past it as adults, but I think that as I see that in my son all the time as well. He knows that he messed up and he desperately wants to find out a way that it's not his fault. So he works very hard at it.
Right. So there are, I think it has to do with something to do with consequences, and it's like, well, it is, ideally people would say, oh, I did this thing and it didn't work out, and maybe some people got hurt because of it. But all of those things, even saying that, makes me a little uncomfortable. It's like, ooh, I don't want to be responsible for other people getting hurt because of some mistake that I made. That doesn't sound fun at all.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but but at the same time, if you are able to do that, it's actually very liberating. But
it is.
But that's a bigger picture view of the world, and it's hard to get there. And
back to your view of like the tribal need, the need to be part of a tribe. If you have done something wrong that is, that has hurt your tribe in some way, there maybe is a very deep fear that you're going to be kicked out of your tribe for what you've done, or like Tonya said, the concept.
And a very real fear.
Oh yeah, being what do they call it? Banished. Yeah, boy, that's a death sentence basically.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe that does drive a lot of the desire to.
But when you have the experience of, by doing this, we can actually move past. I mean, I'm not carrying the baggage of that with me. I've had a complete experience with that, and we're also. I mean, I've helped create a better community by giving an example, and it's the same with vulnerability. I keep having this experience where, if you're in a breakout group or something and people are like, oh, I'm not really ready to go. And if I step up and I go, okay, here's what's going on with me, and do it in a vulnerable way, then everybody seems to suddenly they want to talk too, because I've shown that it's okay to be vulnerable. And you realize, wow, this is a very powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
There's a couple of kinds of vulnerability though, right? Like it's one thing to be vulnerable to say what you're asking for and to put yourself out there like that. But to ask for forgiveness, to be vulnerable and asking for forgiveness in a wrong that you've done is a huge roadblock for a lot of people. That's a different kind of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that idea.
No.
That sounds
no, because they might say no.
Right.
Yeah. I don't like.
And now you have done an irreparable harm. And you have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah. Well, and what happens to me if I say, yeah, I've done this. I'm sorry. Can I? Yeah, boy, it's even hard for me to say, can I be forgiven for that?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's like
they could say no.
They could say no. Yeah.
And we all take a minute on that one. That's a big thing.
Yeah, it is. Communities are hard.
Communities are very hard. There's a reason why we have this job.
Yeah,
right. Because you're willing to do it.
Not everybody. I say this fully. Not everybody can do this job. Not everybody can have this degree of. I feel like I'm tooting my own horn a little bit. Not everybody can have that degree of sympathy or empathy or understanding. Not everybody can be that interested in people's pain points.
Well, it has to be important.
There's a lot of. It does.
Yeah,
it does.
What is it about that draws you to it? Or what is it
about?
Like, why are you drawn to be a community manager? That job was.
You know what? No one's ever asked me that before, James. That's funny. I have to actually think about it. What draws me to being a community manager? The first thing is just the relationships. I think that has a lot to do with it. I enjoy relationship building. I enjoy keeping relationships going. So that's a large part of it, is just the interaction kind of fuels my soul. I could not be a person who sat down and codes all day. Like when I first got recruited into tech, I did my hello world and I thought, oh, it'd be great if I learned some more of no, I'm not that person. I can't do that. I need the interaction. I need the personal touch. Being able to give that to other people feeds my soul. Being helpful feeds my soul. So I think that's the biggest part of it for me. I also enjoy hanging around with smart people. So tech is great. Being able to speak daily with people who are incredibly intelligent and also very passionate about what they do is amazing to me. I don't think I could do community management for most other career fields.
Yeah.
I think that the kind of people that we attract in tech is a separate entity from most other paths.
Yeah.
And the people who work in tech are amazing to me. The people who have these kind of thought processes and ideas are fascinating to me. And getting to work with these people is inspiring.
So in NVC, I would say you have a need for connection, which we all do, a need for contribution, and a need for stimulation.
I would say that'd be accurate.
Yeah. Well, and we started with community being the way that you view your role in community is to help community, and so yeah, that fits with that need for contribution. And, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I definitely don't see it as a management role. I don't feel like I'm managing anybody. I definitely feel like it's just helping people with their pain points, helping people feel heard, especially at a startup, helping a community develop into what we want to see and what we want to emulate. I think that's all I do. It's not that hard to me.
Yeah.
Now the rest of it's just spreadsheets. Honestly, I say this all the time. What I do for my job is listening, and the rest is just A/B testing. That's all it is.
Oh, what's the A/B testing part?
That's the marketing side of it. Okay. Just what resonates, what messaging are we giving that actually resonates and what doesn't.
So like part of your job is to like ask the community like how do you feel about this feature, like somehow getting product feedback or product feedback being one angle to,
and what features do you need, what
features
what problems do you need solved that we haven't solved yet.
Exactly. I think that it's a huge conduit, right? We need that piece of the puzzle to get from the user to the developer.
Right. And it's true marketing, finding out what the customer actually needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we've focused a lot on the human community side of things, and then avoiding toxicity and some of that. But then there is the whole other side of community, which is, why does the community exist? It's because there is technology that they're interested in and want to see grow, and is something they've invested their
and ultimately
career
solves
into
their problems.
And solves their problems. And so there's that whole other side of community that.
So how do you feel like, because it's sort of like, okay, we have this company, we're going to hire this person to handle the touchy-feely stuff. But to me, it seems important that percolates back into the hierarchy.
You said it.
I know.
Hierarchy.
You did.
that it isn't just, oh no, the touchy-feely stuff is only handled in this box here. That it needs to be.
Let's silo compassion over there.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be part. So is that? I guess. Do you feel like you are able to influence the rest of the hierarchical structure, the organizational structure in that way? Because it seems essential to me. It can't just be you.
It can't just be me, and that's 100% the truth. One of the things that I really enjoyed when I interviewed with Startree is I had an interview with our CEO, Kishore Gopalakrishna. And the first thing he asked me was, what does community mean to you? And I gave him a very long, detailed answer. And he was like, that's great. That's what it means to me as well. He was like, we cannot build this without community. It's super important to what we're trying to do here. So having it come from the top down was so important to me, because I'm not here to sell compassion. If I am, it's on an outward way, right? It's to the community. It shouldn't be to my own structure. That should already be built into the recipe, in my opinion. And if it's not, then we've got a different situation on our hands. When I walked onto IBM, which I originally said that after I worked for Oracle, I would never work for another large company like that again. Not because Oracle was terrible, just because I did not fit into that structure as well as I do into a startup structure. But Jonas Jacoby, who was a VP at IBM at the time, came to me. I love Jonas.
He's so
just
great.
The best.
I haven't seen him in years, but yeah, he's awesome.
He's amazing. And he's, again, brilliant and compassionate and interested in what he does.
Yeah.
But he had come to me and said that we need to reinsert IBM into a Java conversation. We need to rebuild our community. And because he was interested in it, and because that was his goal, that became my goal. I don't know if I would be nearly as effective if I had to sell it up the ladder, honestly.
Yeah, community can't be something that just happens over there. Community is something that we all participate in. And maybe that's a fun thing for you about startups, is that is a lot easier, I think, in startups for it to be true. Like at Lightbend, formerly known as TypeSafe, like the whole company was part of the community, so it was much easier for community not to be the thing over there, but for everyone to be part of one community. And that's a fun thing.
And that's the same at StarTree. Like, we have a developer relations team, a small but mighty one, which is hiring if anybody is listening. But I highly encourage, and so do the other people on my team, all of our engineers, all of our developers, like, please what would you like to do? Would you like to be involved in Slack? Would you like to write blog posts? Would you like to go to conferences? Would you like to speak? Would you like to, like, this is a whole company effort. Like, what can we do to encourage you to engage as well?
Oh, that was wonderful. I don't know. I really appreciate your listening and your insights, and building healthy, wonderful communities.
I think this is great, you guys. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't see a lot of technical people who are super into community, or I don't know a lot of technical people who take an interest in how it's built. So I think this was great that you guys wanted to do a community segment. I think it's interesting, and I think that people should be more involved in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're I think very privileged to be able to be part of such a wonderful community. With the Java developer community has been an amazing community for me for many years, and so many wonderful people, so many great relationships in that community, and it's fun to be part of that community with you.
I think we need to move the world to the point where community or compassion or niceness or whatever is a core principle of a company. And that makes a difference whether you choose to join that company or not. Because I think ultimately the Great Resignation, at least to me, I look at it and go, instead of just offering more money, have you thought of creating an environment that doesn't suck, that's actually inspiring, that I would ever want to be part of? I know that's hard, and if we can just offer people more money, then the problem is solved. Anyway.
Or pizza parties. The pizza parties are big.
That'll fix it. Foosball and pizza parties. That's the solution, obviously.
And I belonged to a message board community years ago that had just one rule, and the rule was don't be a jerk. And I think that's something that all companies should take forward and actually spell out if they can. Like, it's very simple but very effective.
That's like that's just bringing it up to this baseline that ought to be. We shouldn't have to say don't be a jerk. We should be able to say make everything awesome. It's like I don't want to work at a company where people are jerks, but I don't also want to work at a company where the baseline is just don't be a jerk. Then it's just neutral. I want to, if I were to ever want to work at a company, it would have to be like, this is the greatest thing in the world. I don't care what I'm paid. I want to be part of this community.
You have such high expectations.
I do.
Seriously, who's had that job before? Tell me.
I don't know. I mean, this is why I've been independent for decades. It's like, because every time I stick my toe in that water, it's like, oh, you have to put up with this. You have to put up with that. You have to put up with,
Unfortunately, there's Tonya, always people in every job.
Yeah, gosh, true. People.
But I've managed to just be able to hang out with the people I want to hang out with. So just make that into a company.
Bruce, you have figured it out.
Why is this such a problem? Well, and our conferences are great.
They are.
So
we should have Tonya up here for the next one.
Yeah, for sure.
If she would like to come. But
yes, of course.
I would love to. That would be fantastic.
Hopefully August. I still haven't heard back from the venue.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Awesome.
August 15th.
Okay.
I hope.
Oh, well, that may not work because our conference at Star Tree is the 16th and 17th. Where are you guys? Are you having it in Colorado or?
Yeah, here in Crested Butte because it's great here. So people love coming up.
We'll let you know.
Keep me in the loop. You never know what could happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Tonya. Really appreciate your honesty and all your insights and everything. And there goes an AirPod.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Sure. Thanks.